this awesome session. My name is Chris DeWitt, and I am with VHB. We are pleased to be one of the sponsors of this great event and to be able to introduce this exciting panel on securing data and positioning our Megaregion as a cyber hub. For those of you who don't know VHB, we are a planning, design, engineering, and environmental consulting firm, and we help our clients create great places. We have about 30 offices, 2,500 employees along the East Coast, from Maine to Florida. That includes locations in Richmond, Williamsburg, and Virginia Beach. And those three locations within VHB function as a single unit, collaborating, applying our best talent throughout the region to benefit our projects, benefit our clients, and the communities in which we work. So that collaborative approach among those three geographic locations is very well aligned with RVA 757 Connects. We feel like we're an integral part of the organization and that our mission is very reflective of the organization's mission. Thinking back on some of the cool things that I've been fortunate enough to work on in my tenure at VHB and the impact that they have had on the Megaregion, I joined VHB about 26 years ago. One of the first projects I worked on was the feasibility study for the Virginia Capitol Trail. Coming out of that, we were fortunate enough to do the design of the Richmond Riverfront section and be part of that great project. More recently, VHB is involved in environmental permitting and compliance for the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel expansion. So part of that transformational project here in the Megaregion. And then lastly, John Martin mentioned in his earlier remarks the Long Bridge project in Northern Virginia, for which VHB is doing engineering design and environmental compliance and permitting as well, both for the expansion of that rail facility, but also for the provision of a new bicycle and pedestrian bridge across the Potomac River. So it makes me happy to be able to say that VHB and that I have been able to work on projects that have helped shape the Megaregion, have had a positive impact. Speaking of impactful efforts and impactful projects, it's my pleasure to turn things over to our panel to talk about how we position the Megaregion as a cyber hub and what that means from an infrastructure and talent perspective. Thanks again.
Thank you, and thank you, Peter, for being on our rail committee, representing VHB. We're now going to turn to cybersecurity, securing data, and I'm going to share with you just one quick statistic and then introduce our moderator, and we'll launch into this. If you go to the next slide, see if I can move. So in economic development, there's a lot of analysis and analytics that you can do to look at different sites, different cities and regions, and compare them. Is it going to be a good site for my particular category of business? And there's a measure called LQ, it's called location quotient, and it measures the concentration of an industry in any one region compared to the country. So if you're a site selector inside a corporation or as a consultant, you want to find a location for your client or your category that has a preponderance of talent there, that you're overrepresented this one location over other alternative locations. And so it's called an LQ analysis, and we do it all the time for clients. Well, if you look at the definition of cybersecurity professionals, and there are SOC codes that match up to that, and you start to look at all these jurisdictions that are our sort of comparison jurisdictions, some direct competitors, and you look at the Metro Richmond LQ of cybersecurity workers or the Hampton Roads cybersecurity workers LQ, you see 1.7 and 1.6, and you look at the innovation quarter combined, it's a 1.7. So that means you almost have twice as many concentration of cybersecurity workers. One more bubble that we actually have an advantage in. You've heard about the energy advantage, now the connectivity advantage, now the cybersecurity advantage. And so you're going to hear more about this, but this is gospel. This is actually the facts that people look at. We really are a cyber hub. And so you're going to hear more about why and what we can become from these experts. And I'm going to turn it over to Glenn Ballard. Glenn is an amazing person. He is on our board, RBA 757 Connects. He's also on the Global Internet Hub Committee and gives us a lot of time in that respect. He's also a William and Mary grad, right? And he has a cybersecurity firm that I think he started off in Northern Virginia, Washington, but now he's based it down here in our mega region and takes care of a lot of corporate clients and governmental clients with cybersecurity. So Glenn, thank you so much once again, and take it over.
Thank you, John. And thank you, VHB, for the introduction. So I know we are the last panel before your lunch, and so we'll try to make this as exciting as possible. I just request that you take the energy that you got from the first two panels and we'll get you there to the great lunch after this. So like John said, my name is Glenn Ballard. I'm founder and CEO of Dragonfli Group. We are a cybersecurity services business that has been in business for a little over 17 years, based here in the region, supporting enterprise clients in both the public and the private sector. I am so excited to be talking to you today on this panel because this region has something very unique, and we're going to walk you through that story. We'll talk to you about the scary parts, so the threats in the landscape today, but more importantly, the how cybersecurity will differentiate this region, how it will drive the economy, and how it will enable businesses here in this region to grow and this mega region to grow further. I'm honored to be on the stage with some of the most leading experts in the field in our region. And so to my right is Will Robinson. He's the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the United States Federal Reserve System, based here in the Richmond area. To his right is Jason Ancarrow. He is the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for CarMax. And then to Jason's right is Luiz DaSilva, who is the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative. And so with that, let's just jump right into it and talk about threats. And so Will, I'm going to hand the first question over to you and talk to us today about some of the things that you're seeing at the Federal Reserve and the threats that you're seeing in the industry today. And specifically, what are you hearing from your peers that are things that keep them up at night?
Sure, and thank you, Glenn. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say the views I'm expressing here are mine and not necessarily those of the Federal Reserve System. So, I'm in information security. Everything keeps me up at night. I don't sleep very well. But when I think about it, I like to kind of bucket things into three categories. And the first is nation states or foreign actors. The second would be supply chain and partners. And the third would be employees and insider risk. So when you look at nation states, you can kind of point to a couple countries that, if you read any newspaper, you're going to see: Russia, China, North Korea. These are the ones that we tend to worry about. Russia has a nasty habit, whether it's actual nation state sponsored or if it's Russian actors, they have a nasty habit of trying to break into critical infrastructure providers. We saw this with Colonial Pipeline a few years ago as an example. So we have a lot of critical infrastructure providers and operators and certainly dependents here. So I'm sure that they're feeling this stress as well. We then turn to China, and their nasty habit is that they're big into intellectual property theft. They do that from everything to creating economic advantage for themselves to decreasing the cycle time to come to bring products to market. So we're certainly very sensitive to them at the Federal Reserve for data theft. North Korea, on the other hand, is more into funding their missile program, and so most of what they do is financially motivated. And so they will go to great lengths to try to earn money. A lot of that can be through ransomware, but also through employment fraud, which we've seen a lot of. And when I say we, I'm talking just the IT industry in general, of folks showing up for a job interview that are actually tied to North Korea financially. And when you think about what are these folks doing, it's a lot harder to actually knock on the door of an entity like the Federal Reserve or CarMax or any of the other companies we have in this room than it is to try to compromise a commonly used technology. So if you think about, we were talking about switches earlier. It's much easier to take advantage of a flaw in something that is ubiquitous, whether it be an edge device or whatever you're using, so that you can have a greater surface area in which to attack. So with that, it comes down to things like basic information security blocking and tackling, things like patch management. They're boring, but they're the things that actually work to be able to stop some of these threat actors. Um, I talked a little bit too about supply chain and third party. Um, Securing the supply chain is critically important. Everyone in this room has a supply chain. Making sure that you know where your products are actually being sourced from and being able to understand the security that's involved in the supply chain. Um, as an example, some companies go to great lengths to make sure that they secure all of the components of their products from inception to delivery. Others aren't as stringent. It's important to know how secure is that product that you are now putting into place in your corporate infrastructure. We also look at our partners, like these days, all of us are dependent on SaaS providers or software as a service. You think about, tools like Workday, which is a common HR and finance application, or Salesforce or other SaaS vendors. Your data is now with that company. So understanding what security are they providing to your data and what security are you still responsible for your data to make sure that that data is not compromised. So just, a basic understanding there. And then I get to insiders. So these come in two flavors. They're malicious insiders. They're usually easy to spot because they tend to be clunky and they make noise after a while. So you can pretty much figure out who's a malicious insider. And then there are your unwitting insiders, those who are being manipulated by someone else and who may not even realize it. Finding them is sometimes a little harder, but through things like user behavior analytics or things like data loss protection strategies, you can kind of make sure that those folks aren't going to cause an impact to your organization. So I said cause an impact to your organization because, Glenn, before I started my diatribe and put everybody to sleep, the question has to be, what keeps me up at night? And what keeps me up at night is I just went through about 5 minutes of threats, and all of us in this room are facing them. And the reason we keep talking about threats is because they keep working. Take phishing as an example. Phishing is one of the oldest tricks in the book, but it still works. And because it works, the thing that keeps me up at night is being able to operate in a degraded state. I mean, the Federal Reserve has a payments infrastructure that I will guarantee you everyone in this room operates over. And all of us who receive direct deposit paychecks, boom, like goes over ACH. I want that infrastructure up because I like my paycheck to hit my bank account. If that goes down, or if we face an operational issue due to a cyber attack, how are we still going to be able to deliver that payments infrastructure? How is Dominion Power going to be able to keep giving us the power that we need? That's what keeps me up at night. And to make sure that you can, make sure you have a good resilience plan, you're testing and validating it, and that you have every redundancy that you need to be able to deliver in a degraded state.
Thank you. And then, Jason, you're probably seeing some of the same issues and challenges, but in a different purview. So, from an enterprise perspective, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing and how you're facing them today?
Yeah, our adversaries are a little bit different than Will's. We see more of what is known as the cyber criminal, although we do see some nation-state activity. But we are really focused on, in the state of CarMax's program, harnessing the innovation in the industry right now. So, I mean, we keep an eye on the adversary, of course, and we're designing and building, defense in depth to prevent any successful outcomes from the adversary. But I think some of the biggest opportunities that I think about are making sure we're keeping up in the arms race or staying slightly ahead in the arms race. And that comes in the form of making sure we're keeping an eye on the marketplace, knowing what the market is providing as far as innovation and consolidation opportunities for our platforms. I mean, for example, for me, I've been at CarMax almost 10 years now, and I've replaced platforms that I brought in my tenure there. So we're constantly looking at the marketplace, and that's another cool thing about the marketplace is that the tools that are being made available today, Will mentioned this software as a service platforms, we're huge fans of it. And we're huge fans of it because it works, but also because it has what you call low barriers to exit. Some of them can get a little sticky, but they have low barriers to exit, which means they have to continuously innovate to keep our business. And also, if they don't innovate, I can relatively easy in most cases move over to a better platform that offers more capabilities or more consolidation opportunities for my team. So we look a lot at just keeping an eye on what the industry is providing to make sure we're not being left behind. And of course, AI is a big part of that. AI has been in our platforms for years. It used to be called automated actions. Now it's called agentic AI. But we've been leveraging those capabilities for years just to be efficient and head off demand on headcount growth on our team.
And Jason, you talked about the arms race and the speed of innovation, and then also the number of threats that are coming towards you. So how do you balance that with finding talent and bringing that talent on board?
You want to not be reactionary because you really can't be at a point in time where you don't have coverage in certain areas. I think I recently was reminded about how constraints drive innovation, and we've done a lot of different, I think, disruptive things in our cybersecurity program to adapt to constraints, because you're never going to have everything you want as far as investment dollars, human resources. But that has forced us to really be innovative and rethink how we operate a cybersecurity program for a Fortune 200 company with not every resource you can imagine that you might need. So some of the guiding principles that help us do that is we have one guiding principle. We talk about perfect depth and breadth, right? And what that means is everyone on the team should be able to learn at least, be a master of one platform, but know how to operate all platforms. It's never attainable, but it's a guiding principle that we strive towards for our associates. And also, I think that's been a competitive advantage for recruiting and retaining talent. I think a lot of our associates really like the opportunity to be exposed and have their hands on different technologies across the entire cybersecurity program, and also have a voice in where the roadmap of the program goes.
Thank you. And then Luiz, talking about talent, so what gaps are you seeing in the industry today, and what is CCI doing to help fill those gaps in the talent industry?
Thanks, Glenn, and good morning, everyone. I want to just take a step back and explain what CCI is, first of all. So the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative was created about 6 years ago by the General Assembly, and it brings together 47 institutions of higher education throughout Virginia. So I got a lot of mileage out of that map and showing the 47 institutions that are part of CCI. When I present CCI outside Virginia, people are very surprised to learn that we have 47 institutions of higher education to start with. And this is basically the whole story, because to get all of these players to work together is quite unique. I don't think any other state has that sort of initiative that brings together all of their higher education ecosystem. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech, where I lead CCI, and I joined Virginia Tech 27 years ago in 1998 as a then young fresh PhD. And the first thing I learned at Virginia Tech is that UVA was our big competitor and rival. So just moving into Virginia, that's literally the number one thing I learned. Nowadays, this is completely different. We work with UVA and Mason and William & Mary and all of our community colleges extremely well, and I think that's really remarkable. We have this vision of making Virginia the leader in cybersecurity and on a global scale, and the mission that the General Assembly gave us was research, workforce development, and innovation in cybersecurity. And I'll show you just one more slide. The way that I take our mission from the General Assembly is that ultimately we're looking at economic development in Virginia and helping this ecosystem. So we commission periodically an economic impact study for CCI, and the latest one tells us that we have been responsible for creating about 4,600 jobs and $500 million in value added to the Virginia GDP. So okay, so that's about CCI. So getting to your question, Glenn. What am I hearing? First of all, there's a numbers problem, right? So Virginia has about 110,000 people working in cybersecurity, and we have 53,000 job openings. So a third of the total number of jobs are currently open. So we need to form talent and attract talent that will take those jobs. That's crucial for maintaining industry here, for bringing industry here. And then we can look at Richmond and the Hampton Roads area, and the situation is similar. So I just looked at the numbers this morning. There's an institution called CyberSeek, so you can go to cyberseek.org, and they pull together these numbers by state and then by region. So Richmond has about 7,500 people working in cybersecurity, and then 5,000 job openings at the moment in cybersecurity. And the Hampton Roads area, it's a little bit better, about 11,000 people working in cybersecurity, about 5,000 job openings as well. So this is a huge challenge. How do we form more talent in cybersecurity? How do we attract talent from other states, from other locations to come here? And how do we retain people here? So after they graduate from William & Mary or UVA or Tech or anywhere else, we want them to stay in Virginia and not move to, say, California. And then what I'm hearing from the students is a little bit surprising, is that some of the students who are graduating are telling me it's actually not easy to find a job. So we have all of these job openings, but it's not trivial for a student who's graduating to actually find a job. And that's because a lot of these job openings, even at the starting level, are requiring a lot of experience. So you get into this catch-22, 3 years of experience for you to have an entry-level job. So how do you get that experience if you don't get the entry-level job? So a lot of our focus in CCI has been experiential learning. So we don't actually work with the curricula in particular, because all of these universities and colleges have their own curriculum and their own programs. But what we do is we add a layer of experiential learning on top of the existing curricula, so that the students, while they are pursuing their degrees, they get to work with their future employers. That is shown to retain people in the field, so the students don't leave the field, first of all, retain students in the area, and then, of course, they have a higher probability of staying with the company where they intern. So we have internship programs, apprenticeship programs, project-based learning programs. So part of why I'm delighted to be here today is as an advertisement to all of the companies in the area to partner with us in some of these experiential learning opportunities throughout the entire state.
Thank you, Luiz. And building upon that, in this region within I-64 corridor, what do you see as the value of the partnership between universities, government, and institutions? And how do everyone in this audience and us up on stage, how can we play a part in that?
Yeah, I think collaboration is everything, really. I think there are incentives for us to compete as universities, businesses compete and so on. But when we are able to bring these entities together and then compete against other states or other countries or other entities outside the corridor, I think that makes it very strong. And we've been doing, so to get a little bit more concrete about this, so the ways that we are partnering right now, I think the lowest hanging fruit is in talent, right? So I think there's a way that universities and colleges need to work with government and industry to foster talent, to retain talent, and so on. But there are other ways as well. We've been working a lot with startups, for example, as a way to provide some knowledge that sits right now in the universities and colleges to these startups, and also as a way to translate research and new ideas that start at the university level into commercialization. We do that in different ways. We have some spin-outs, so sometimes professors and students want to start their own companies. That's great. That creates jobs. That contributes to the economy. But many times, these people don't want to create their own company, but there's an opportunity to work with existing companies of all sizes, but startups tend to be particularly good at that, to translate some ideas into that. So I think the more that we can work together to form this ecosystem, in the I-64 corridor and then throughout Virginia. The more that we can get government, industry, and academia together, that's what's going to form this global internet hub. That's what is going to get the region recognized internationally and nationally for its strengths.
Thank you. And just a bit of a side conversation, and CCI is an untapped resource in this region. And so we actually brought 3 CCI scholars into our business 2 years ago, working on LLMs and advanced predictive analytics around vulnerabilities around cyber. And they were some of the most talented students that we've ever seen, one from William and Mary, one from ODU, and one from VCU. But I think you trained them too well, because all 3 did leave, and they went to California on the West Coast. So that could be another panel conversation around how we keep the talent here and retain it in the region. But going along your talk around collaboration, so a question to all 3 of you: if the 3 of you were to work on a project together, what would it be? Will?
Well, in terms of what would it be, I do think that having a notion of talent and sharing talent is going to be the foundation of any project. Like I look at, my employer, the Federal Reserve. If you come to the Federal Reserve and you work in any capacity, but we'll keep it in the cyber realm for now, you're going to get a certain set of experiences and you're going to build certain skills. But I then want that early career person or that middle career person to go work for Jason, because if they do, they're going to get even greater skills. They're going to be exposed to different business problems, and then they're going to be able to go somewhere else and continue to do that to help other companies. And I think to the degree that we can have companies, academia, and government all with that mindset of making sure that retaining doesn't necessarily mean retaining at our companies. It means keeping those folks in this region so that we can make sure that they're growing in their careers, but at the same time, we're collectively benefiting from their knowledge.
Yeah, I think for me, it's my personal experience. 10 years ago, I used to say, and it was probably true somewhat 10 years ago, I kind of cut my technology teeth in Northern Virginia. I relocated and tried it for a few years, and I, back then or now, I wouldn't have the experience I have on my resume, or probably be in this position had I not started there, because back in those days, in the early internet days, there just wasn't a lot of heavy, new technology opportunities here. And then when I moved back here, I used to say there's not a lot of opportunity to work in big enterprise cybersecurity outside of Northern Virginia. There's relatively few here in this corridor we're talking about here. But these days, it's totally different. And I think one of the projects I would focus on is awareness. I think there's a lack of understanding for the folks entering the career field and those existing in the career field, those statistics that we started off this panel with. And I think just some security, some awareness and marketing of that might help get that message out to these candidates, these cybersecurity pros, that hey, you can find your first job in this region, and you can stay in this region your entire career if you wish to do so.
And I agree with all of that. And the one thing that I would add is working on bringing people from non-traditional fields into cybersecurity. So you don't need to be necessarily a computer scientist or an electrical engineer to be working in cybersecurity. We have some really successful programs, I think, in terms of internships, for example, in election security, where we work with the Board of Elections, and then we can attract students who are interested in political science into the field. And I think there is similar possibilities in the business schools, in the financial area, where some of the domain knowledge can be paired up with some cybersecurity knowledge, and then as a way to bring more talent into the area.
Great. And shifting gears a tiny bit, I think we'd be remiss if we weren't talking about AI. And Dean Schmidt talked about how we need to augment the skills with AI, and that's one of the ways that we would differentiate ourselves in the region. But if we took a cyber lens on AI, would like to talk through that. And Will, what do you see today as hype in AI, and how do you see AI changing and impacting the cyber landscape today?
Sure, and there's no denying the benefits of AI. I mean, from a cyber defender perspective, we've embraced it. You talked about use cases at your company where you look at predictive analytics for vulnerabilities. We look at it or we implement it as well in similar fashions, whether it be in processing intelligence or looking at data. It's fantastic. Additionally, as a security practitioner, we want the business lines across our enterprise to bring in AI to help them be better. The challenge with that is we need to make sure that they're doing so in a way that's safe, in a way that's going to give them results that they can actually feel confident in. And doing that requires governance. It requires making sure that we have an understanding of how models are going to be used, how models are secured, and how the outputs are going to be secured. So, I think those are some key foundational steps to making sure that you have responsible AI use throughout your enterprise. Additionally, you really have to stay on top of knowing thyself. And what I mean is, we all rely on so many applications in our businesses these days. Products are getting new AI capabilities all the time, and understanding what products you already have in your ecosystem that are being updated with new AI capabilities to make sure that they're not being misused by employees, and to make sure that you're getting data that you can actually feel confident in, that there's no misinformation that's resulting from them. So continuing to test, validate, knowing what's in your ecosystem. Then let's talk about it from a cyber attacker perspective. Um, you know, I mentioned all the benefits that AI brings us as defenders. It's great. It cuts down cycle time. It takes away a lot of the repetitive and manual tasks. It does the same thing for cyber attackers. Now, there's a lot of hype around it of, oh, AI is going to make it impossible for those in cyber defense, and it's going to give all the advantage to cyber attackers. And sure, there are some advantages. We've all seen examples of deep fakes and things like that out in the media, and yes, they're there. Just last week, Anthropic came out with an announcement of a disruption that, or they were able to disrupt a campaign that was using Claude to perpetrate attacks, and the threat actors were able to essentially just about take the human out of the loop and have AI capabilities perpetrate this entire attack. That said, I think we're still in the nascent stages of threat actors and criminals being able to really take advantage of it. I mean, yes, the key benefit is AI enables you to do anything at scale easier. So it enables criminals to do anything at scale easier. Why am I going to spend time doing one manual attack when I can just use AI to have that same attack perpetuate, across a range of companies? So I think that right now the reality is not as great as the hype. However, I think in very short order, just as we on the good guy side are figuring out how to make AI work for our businesses, you better believe threat actors are going to be doing the same thing.
And Jason, you started talking about this earlier already on AI, but how do you see it reshaping your world?
Yeah, for our associates and even myself, we've had to train. I think about the big disruptors over our lifetime: internet, cloud, AI, right? I don't think we're still entertaining associates learning the internet, but I was at CarMax when we migrated to the cloud, and I think for the cloud, it was interesting because it was more passive. Like, the cloud's coming, you had to learn how to apply your cybersecurity understanding and frameworks to public cloud adoption. AI, it's coming, but I think it's more, you have to be more active about getting involved with it and understanding it and applying it to your role. And I have varying degrees across my team on that spectrum. And I challenge myself. I have to have my own personal narrative. We challenge our associates. You've got to have your personal narrative about not only what you're doing for cybersecurity, what you can do for cybersecurity, but what is your AI story? What is your AI agent doing, and how are you applying artificial intelligence to be more efficient, cut down the noise, automate, things like that? And that applies to candidates that we're looking for now and that we're going to be looking for in the future. They need to come in the front door with not only their story and their narrative about their prowess in cybersecurity, but how they understand artificial intelligence, both for the adversary and for us, the defender, and then do they plan to apply that, and how can they demonstrate that in the hiring process? So those are some of the things we're thinking about and seeing in the market for new talent and our current talent on our team.
That's great. And Luis, what is CCI doing to help prepare students in the AI world?
Yeah, so maybe overlapping a little bit with what Will said, I think there are three ways in which cybersecurity and AI intersect. So the first one is if you go to a major cybersecurity conference like RSA, which takes place in San Francisco every year, every vendor of cybersecurity solutions is claiming that they're using AI as part of their solution. So how we can use AI to defend ourselves against cyber attack. And the second one is the bad guys can also use AI for offensive purposes. So the Anthropic example, which was attributed to a nation state attack, is an example of that. So how slowly they're getting better at using AI and some of these agents to actually mount a cyber attack with very little human intervention. We can also see things like phishing is getting a lot better. So you can do a lot more spear phishing, for example, using AI. And then there's a third category, I would say, which is we need to defend AI systems from attack. So attack to AI systems themselves. So data poisoning attacks, for example, or prompt injection attacks. So attacks that are specific to AI systems. So right now, I think there's practically no cybersecurity without AI, and there should be no AI without cybersecurity. So it goes in both directions. If you're building an AI system without thinking about the security issues, that's going to blow up in our faces very, very quickly. So when we train students in cybersecurity right now, AI is basically part of all aspects. I can barely differentiate between the two anymore.
And building off of the talent and recruiting talent. So Jason, if you were to give advice to the folks and the enterprises in this room today, what would that advice be on recruiting and retaining talent in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think for the first 5 years of my career, it was a budding cybersecurity program. I focused entirely on recruiting and then shifted to retention for the folks we had. But now we're at our mature state and being fully staffed, we really focus heavily on retention. And for me, I was thinking about it's being deliberate about what you are and what you are not. We are deliberate about focusing on recruiting and retaining higher level cybersecurity talent, which has also fared well in this AI wave, right? Because AI right now, it's really oriented, and I think the benefit is around automating and replacing a lot of the lower level functions, repetitive manual functions, the functions that the people that I hire and retain aren't going to be interested in doing. And so anything I can't automate, I'm getting out, offshoring it until I can automate it or eliminate it. But that's the type of talent I seek, and being deliberate about that and marketing that to your team, that's the type of folk that join my team and stay on my team. So that's been highly effective. Just the diversity of work that we're able to allow all the different members of our team to dabble in, become experts on, and really kind of direct their own career path, I think has been beneficial. But if you're not focusing, if you're not doing some of those basic things, I mean, it applies well beyond cybersecurity, right? Engagement, transparency. We've been very successful at retention at CarMax for our cybersecurity pros, and it's because of just focusing on the fundamentals. I don't miss check-ins, I don't miss file reviews, I don't miss skip levels. Those are a priority for myself and my leadership team, and those ceremonies help us stay close to our associates, keep them highly engaged, and we do a lot of crowdsourcing across the program. I can't, it really does take a village to keep a cybersecurity program updated with all of the constant changes, all the different news feeds that we have to review every day. So just making sure they're in the loop and participating and have a voice at the table has been highly effective and successful for us.
Great. And Luis, the reverse of that question. So what advice would you give to early stage students and scholars that are trying to break into the cybersecurity market?
Well, I tell them to get as much hands-on experience as you possibly can. So I usually tell people that who ask me about what is the key to professional success. To me, it's a combination of you need to have some talent for the thing, and then you need to work hard, and then you need to have the opportunity. So a bit of luck, but opportunity also requires that you recognize that the opportunity has occurred, right? So you're fortunate to have the opportunity, but then you have to do some work to say, okay, let me take advantage of that. And I think specifically for students, the more they can work with their future employers, so early on from freshman year, from high school years if they can, just take every internship opportunity, take any apprenticeship, hands-on projects, research opportunities as undergraduates, and so on. So I think that's key to their success.
Thank you. And just one more question for all of you, and then I'll turn it over to the audience for questions. So in 5 years from now, it's 2030, you all are sitting on stage. What do you hope that we're celebrating about this region? Will?
I'm gonna keep going back to talent. I'm hoping that we're celebrating that we are recognized as a place that can incubate, deploy, and retain top cyber talent in this area. I think right now you naturally gravitate towards Northern Virginia when you start thinking about things like that. But I think that we've, through this panel and the others this morning and those to come this afternoon, we've clearly demonstrated that there's a great story to tell here.
Jason?
I think primarily closing that perception and marketing gap that lets folks know and informs them that they can start and finish their career in this region, and they should be thinking about us just like they think about Northern Virginia. So I think the reality is there. I think it's just closing the gap on the perception, all doing that all while making sure I don't have to tap the brakes driving out to Williamsburg like I did this morning. So don't make 64 295 and the local 95 like 395 and 66 up north.
Luiz?
Very similar. I want the region to be recognized as a top place to come and work, and that's what's going to attract investment and attract students and retain them. And not just in comparison to Northern Virginia, but also when we think about the Austin, Texas area or Denver. I want this region to be having the same level of reputation.
Great. And now let's open up to the audience for any questions that you may have.
Kasia Gzolkowski, Versability Resources. I'm wondering if, in regard to talent, is CCI and others looking to leverage the natural gifts of neurodiverse individuals in the cybersecurity arena? And again, these are people who are here in our community and likely to stay in our community. So how do we get them engaged in this field?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think in general for areas like computer science and engineering, we're starting to recognize that there is enormous potential to leverage talents of neurodiverse people. We don't have a particular program for that, but we're certainly very, very welcoming and very, very open to their contributions.
Thank you very much. It's very enlightening, your panel. My name is Milan Tran. I represent the State Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce. I'm following the importance of quantum computing. And we speak a lot about AI. And as some of you may know, that quantum computing utilizes a different method to compute data. You know that, right? You're a scientist. But that won't be a reality in everyday life until maybe 20 years. However, if you talk about infrastructure, workforce development, investment, don't we think we should think about it? Because UVA, Virginia Tech, and Potomac region are already in the research mode for quantum. I wonder if you have anything to add on that new emerging technology. Thank you.
I can start. We were just talking about this recently. The way we're thinking about quantum, and we really think about it from the cybersecurity lens of it being in the hands of our adversaries or mainstream. I think if you're looking at, and the range is very wildly right now on when it's going to be available commercially, and then, who knows how long after that before it gets into the hands of the adversary at scale, right? So we think about, we've seen, we think about being prepared to defend against, and the primary attack vector is decryption, or attacking encrypted data, encrypted channels, right? And that's just the cybersecurity lens on quantum and how we talk about it. So, I think one of the biggest threats for us, and this is a concept I really learned about recently when I was doing some research, is this whole concept of basically steal the data, decrypt it later. So you've got the adversaries have stolen data all these years, right? They're sitting on that data waiting for compute to catch up, and maybe it's quantum that they can get their hands on, and then start decrypting that data. And depending on how long it takes for that capability to come along, maybe the data is useless at that point. But the steal now, decrypt later is one of the biggest threats we think about. And then we think about like quantum proof encryption algorithms. I know of at least one company, and I think there's been a few that started. They were trying to market, quantum proof encryption. They've already gone bankrupt because when I talk to them, like, okay, call me after the first algorithms pop, then I might be interested in having a conversation, but it's just not there yet. So I guess right now we're keeping an eye on that space, and then further, I'm expecting our platforms, our service providers, our vendors to infuse those levels of quantum proof encryption in their platforms. So I'm kind of just organically getting the benefits of that as I stay ahead of technology and innovate my program.
And I'll just add a tiny bit there. So we are also seeing our clients getting prepared for what Jason talks about, the harvest and then the decrypt later. And so there are steps that can be taken today around that to prepare for the quantum exploits that happen later. And it's all around your asset inventory and understanding what encryption models are happening and deployed in your environment today. And so we're supporting a lot of our clients in just getting their inventories correct today around those asset inventories, around those encryption models, in order to be prepared for when those encryption models become quantum and become advanced in that space. And so there are some stepping stones that organizations can start working on today to be better prepared later.
And just to mention on the research side, we have a number of researchers working on post-quantum cryptography, so being prepared for when quantum computing is fully here. Also a lot of work on quantum key distribution. So yeah, there's quite a bit of work that overlaps cybersecurity and quantum information sciences.
Great question.
Hello. So I actually have had the experience of working with General Electric on their Digital Ghost program with the DOE, which was applying digital twins that are usually for predictive maintenance, but taking that information and assessing critical infrastructure equipment, which we're talking about critical infrastructure on the earlier panels, to detect cyber attacks. Because cyber attacks, as you know, on wind turbines, all kinds of turbines in these places, they send data to break them, for instance. Is the cyber community here interacting with the subject matter experts for this critical infrastructure to create digital twins and digital ghosts or digital shadows to help protect the infrastructure as we're building it?
Yeah, our focus this year in CCI is actually cybersecurity for critical infrastructures. So every year we pick an area to build capacity in Virginia, and we provide some seed funding for researchers to work in this area. This year, the topic is cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. We had more proposals internally than for any other program that we ever ran. So, and a lot of this work is collaborative between cybersecurity experts and domain experts. We have a group working, for example, with DC Water on protecting water systems. Water systems have been under attack from cybersecurity attackers. We have groups working on how to protect the energy distribution systems, the smart grid, and so on. So yeah, that's a huge area. A lot of opportunity for, again, government, industry, and academia to work together.
Yeah, for us, I think it's still an emerging focus. So I think there's a lot of benefit in simulation and digital twins in the cybersecurity space, and we're starting to dip our toe in there in that water. But we still have a lot of opportunity to make sure we're getting the full benefits of that and understanding how it's applicable to our ecosystem.
And then just to tie it into another topic we've been talking about, and that is AI. One thing that AI is allowing is to take environments like digital twins and so forth and do threat modeling against them to really analyze, where your vulnerabilities and where you're exposed, and then how can you mitigate them.
And then I'll just add here, so we are also working in this area. So a lot of times when you think of cybersecurity, you think of the IT environment. What you're getting at is OT, so operational technology, so physical devices that are somehow connected to the network. And so we're supporting today a large power utility organization, not locally, and then also a large aerospace organization around OT cybersecurity, around digital twins. And so we are standing up digital twins to test vulnerabilities, to model threats, and then also to prepare and configure firmware upgrades for them. So in the digital twin environment, so they're prepared in the real world. And so we're supporting organizations today in that space.
Hello, I'm Bill Figge, president of Brightpoint Community College. And in the community college system, we serve students who are coming right out of high school. We have students who go to college and then realize they're not quite ready and they come back in their mid-20s. We have students in their 40s, all the gamut, right? Open access institution, trying to find upward economic mobility. But I heard a math problem before is like it takes 3 years of experience for an entry-level job. And so how do we work with students coming through community colleges, perhaps transferring to 4-year or looking to go right in? How do we help them get into this high skill, high demand area? How do we help them get to those opportunities that you have?
I mean, right off the bat, it's the easy button is the internship process. I mean, it kind of bypasses that whole 3-year window, right? And that's a funnel, right? So we're very deliberate about seeking talent that, I wouldn't have an intern unless I had an opportunity to offer them a job at the end of their internship. And usually I'm focusing that summer between the junior and senior years. So that's one way to bypass that. I think it becomes a little challenging when you're trying to hire direct. However, certain companies, I think we're on that spectrum where we have had great success. A few years ago, we looked around and said, hey, we've got a very senior team here. We need to start diversifying from a skill set and experience perspective. And I think the last 5 hires of mine have been college new hires and they've all been slam dunks and they've all been recruited in this corridor that was on your slide for CCI. So, and I think we lost one years ago that stayed in the region but wanted to get into software development. But it's been a real boon for us recruiting and developing and retaining our own talent here locally.
And I'll just tack on to that, Jason. So we also have had great success recruiting in the area here to a lot of places that you don't necessarily associate with a tremendous cyber program. So there's a lot to be said for the colleges and universities here in the 64 corridor. But additionally, we've seen instances of folks coming, whether it be from a community college, a technical school, things like that, who might want to get into a cyber role. And sometimes it is almost better to, not almost better, but another avenue can be to get into an IT role that maybe isn't cyber. To get into the organization, learn the organization, and then take a lateral move over into a cyber role. And we've had great success with that as well. So I think it's just as important for folks to learn the business and figure out how their role on a cyber team or an IT team is going to impact the business. And you can do that in a variety of roles and then apply it to cyber.
One more question.
Well, hello, my name is J.R. Locke, and work with a public-private partnership with a company called EdLogix and the Birdsong Health Literacy Center of Excellence, where we actually trying to create a healthier region. And so we often are looking for talent. But the specific question is, we've talked about retention for a number of years, and even at this particular forum. And so I'm just wondering, because maybe I'm just not familiar with it, is there a an entity or an organization that's actually focusing on specific strategies to develop how do we retain the talent here and keep them here, whether it's Richmond or Hampton Roads? Is there some organization or initiative that's focusing on that? And if not, do you guys have any ideas of how that should happen?
I'm not aware of any, and I'm not sure how you centralize it. I think these are a lot of just best practice industry standard guidance that you should be applying actively. I think it does take a deliberate effort. Retention doesn't just happen, right? It's a recipe of compensation, engagement, interesting work, culture, solid leadership, and which I think is sometimes often overlooked as a key ingredient. So just there's a lot of research out there what the pieces are to the puzzle, and just making sure you're being very deliberate about that and applying that to your team is what I would recommend. I don't have a recommendation for how to centralize that into an organization that helps with that.
And I don't have the answer either, but if you were at Convergence last year and heard one of the keynote speakers, which was President Rowe from William and Mary, and she spoke about this issue. And I always lean back and think about that every time this topic comes up. And she said it's not, and this is definitely summarizing her statement, but it's not the companies that you're working for, it's not the work that you're doing, but it's the extracurriculars that the region is providing you. So are you able to drive down I-64 and not hit your brakes? Are you able to go to a concert and see some of the great music? Can you go to a sports event and hang out with your friends? And so, I mean, the first panel talked about the cool factor. I really do think it's the cool factor that will keep the talent here and retain talent in this region. So again, not the answer, but I always lean back to what her statements were last year. Great question. So with that, I think we're at time. So I appreciate everybody's questions. It was a great conversation. I very much appreciate you all here today. So Will, Jason, Luiz, experts in this region, and thank you for keeping us to sleep at night. So thank you all, and
thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
That's great.